do you think we should ask the question about what our purpose is as individuals and finding our purpose?
This is such a great question. I always like Joseph Campbell's "Follow Your Bliss." Like this idea that like you should follow the things that make you intrinsically happy. And I also do this with my students at ASU. Like when I get a new PhD student, my first way of like mentoring them is to try to find out what their core passion questions are. And then how do we find problems to work on that are aligned with who you are intrinsically and what you're interested in? Because I think, you know, if you want to unlock human potential, you have to have people working on things they love. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, the first thing before you like try to think about a career or anything else you want to do in your life, you have to think about how it makes you feel and how much like purpose it gives you and how much sense of, you know, moving in a direction you feel like you want to be moving.
Sure.
And I find this all the time. Like if you have a student, like, I mean, research is hard, right? And I think for me, it's much more, you know, like people think science is this like technical thing that like you're just doing calculations or something. But the way that we do science in the space I work in, which is this idea, like this generating new explanations and new ideas, is much more creative. And I was saying before, it's pretty emotional because you're basically trying to find out how reality works and think about it and interrogate it and like parse it down to some concepts that you can talk to other people about and then bat those ideas around and try to build, you know, a theory and an experiment to test it. It's a really hard thing to do. And so I find like with students, if they don't really care about the problem, it's too hard to do that kind of work.
It's too hard.
Yeah.
You might be able to talk about it for a little bit, but you're not going to be able to deal with the years of research.
Right. But if you love the problem, the rest of it's easy.
So the problem you love is, how did life originate?
I think it's
solving that.
I think it's just what is life, but
what is life?
But that problem's going to be solved by solving the origin of life.
Interesting.
They're the same problem, and it's the same problem as making contact with alien life. I think it goes back to this idea of like unifying thing. Like people think these questions are different. What is a mind? Like, but I think all these questions are deeply related.
So what is life is what you're trying to answer.
Yes.
What do you think it is?
I think it's the universe's mechanism of creativity. But also, what I was saying before is it's deeply related to the physics of time. So if I think about myself as a physical object that exists in the universe, I think about myself that's, you know, like it's a very large object in time. I have a lot of causal power, so to speak, and I have a lot of generative potential about what can come next because of that, because I'm a very, you know, humans are very large objects. We don't look large, but we're very large in the space of possibilities, if you think about that kind of projection. So physical size, small. In time, we're very big. And in time, in terms of like potential of possibilities we can generate in the future, very big.
Well, in terms of physics, what's your thoughts on the law of attraction? Or having an idea and seeing something in your imagination and actually manifesting it or creating it, you know, with the speed that it comes quicker. What are your thoughts on that?
I think again, those are sort of similar. So I find in my own life, again, this is sort of like meta level thinking with Sara. So this is not very scientific, but this is very intuitive for me based on the kind of science I do. You know, I have a very strong sense of purpose about wanting to work on these problems. And I find this kind of interesting alignment with other people that have shared sense of purpose and the kind of collaborations and creativity that comes out of that.
You get excited from that,
Yes. And in some ways, if I was going to rationalize that in terms of physics of life, that makes sense to me because things that, like things will come together that have the knowledge to generate, you know, the potential space, right? So it's, I don't know how to describe it exactly the right way, but I think there are some explanations for things that we feel that maybe are very coincident with kind of things that might generally be features of life in terms of how we feel fulfilled in our lives and how we feel a sense of purpose. And ultimately, like if you're trying to explain what life is, you're trying to explain how the universe acquires purpose and how is the universe a creative place.
Sure.
And I think the universe is generating itself. Like the universe is, you know, in standard physics, the universe just exists and everything exists all at once. There's no time, right? But in this physics that we're building for life, the universe is generating itself at every moment. And we are actually part of that generation mechanism.
So it's expanding.
Yes.
The universe is expanding.
It's expanding in the space of possibilities.
Not physically.
Well, it is physically expanding in terms of dark energy.
Dark matter.
Well, dark matter. No, so there's a difference between dark energy and dark matter. So dark matter is matter. So it's like, made of physical stuff like this table. It just happens to not interact with the electromagnetic field, so it doesn't emit photons. And it seems to be in galaxies, and we have some evidence that there's this other kind of matter that's not any of the matter that we know currently. It doesn't behave like any current elementary particles because it doesn't interact with photons in this way, but it's massive. Or at least cumulatively it's massive. Dark energy, on the other hand, is we have observational evidence that the universe is expanding its acceleration, like its growth. So we used to think the universe was completely static, and then we realized that the universe was growing as a function of time, and we thought that growth rate should be slowing down because the matter in the universe should slow it down by the gravitational attraction. But what we've realized is actually the universe is accelerating its expansion. And so this force driving the acceleration is called dark energy.
What's on the edge of the universe?
That may not be a meaningful question because the universe might not have an edge.
So just it's infinite.
It could be infinite, or it could be, it has a finite size. So think of a ball, for example. So a ball doesn't actually have an edge. So the universe could just have a topology that's ball-like. It's a closed universe, but it could be larger than our visible universe. So it looks flat locally. So we actually don't know the shape of the whole universe. There are some people that make conjectures about how to experimentally test features of the shape of the universe, but yeah.
Like if someone was to try to get to the edge of the universe or to the sphere of the universe, how long would it take with the technology we have?
I don't know. I couldn't do that calculation off the top of my head, but I can tell you that in our solar system, we launched the Voyager spacecraft in the 1970s. I think it was 1977, but I'd have to double check that. And it passed the heliopause, which is the sort of outer range of like where the sun's solar wind actually influences, like outer space, just a few years ago. I don't remember. I think it was 2015. I don't know the exact years. I remember I was teaching astronomy and none of my students knew anything about Voyager or the fact that this was the first time a technological object left the solar system.
Wow.
So that was the first time humans ever left the solar system, or a robot that we created, right. And that was a few years ago, and it took
40-something years.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So the universe is quite big. But the interesting, so this is where I'm going to push back on sort of like, the traditional physics, oh my God, the universe is huge, let's look in awe kind of thing. Because I think people don't appreciate how much can be generated on this planet.
Of course.
So chemistry, like people underappreciate how big chemical space is. So physical space, the physical size of the universe, we can see out, we can see like Hubble, like you can see the most distant galaxies. But if you want to look at chemical space, and like how many molecules, small molecules, let's say, you have a dozen or so atoms. I actually don't know the exact numbers, but like amino acid is like the basic building block of a protein. You put two of those together, really tiny molecule, just that size molecule, there's estimated to be 10 to the 60 possible molecules. That doesn't sound like that's just a number I can throw out, but there's not enough resources in the entire universe to make every small possible molecule. And on Earth, we have the generative capacity because we have human chemists, and in fact, we now have robot chemists to explore chemical space at speeds that we can't explore it. And so there's this space of possibilities that are accessible on this planet because of our technology and because of biology that are not accessible anywhere else. Or you want to think about the space of all possible technologies. That space is actually exponentially large.
Crazy.
And if you could change a combinatorial space to a physical space, and there was actually a way of mapping them mathematically, that would be quite hard. But I think Earth is bigger in the possibility space than the rest of the universe we've observed.
You mean like in the possibilities of what a human could create in their life? What is possible for every human to create in their own life?
I don't know. Maybe it's unlimited. Some people think it's unbounded. It's about the physical stuff.
What limits us the most? Is it the physical elements? Is it our mindset? Is it...
I think it's our mindset. I think we hold ourselves back a lot. Like collectively as at the planetary scale, like what are humans doing? And also individually. Because it's easy to emotionally hold ourselves back when if we thought about things rationally, we can make a lot of progress. But emotions are important too because they can be a guide to like how things subjectively feel and kind of steer trajectories. So,
what can we do from all your research and discoveries and knowledge, what can we do to improve our mindset so that we are more unlimited than we are limited as humans?
I think the thing for me that's most interesting is the role of imagination and imagining a positive future. So, and this really struck me actually. So I mentioned I work at ASU, which is a phenomenal university, but I remember a few years ago we were starting a science and imagination initiative. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But the whole idea was to get scientists and science fiction writers together. But it was with a specific purpose because most of our, fantasy and science fiction writing was built on apocalyptic narratives. And the idea was, unless we can write about positive futures, positive science fiction futures, how is humanity actually going to build them and envision them? And I thought that was such a powerful idea. And I really think about that in my own work. So a lot of scientists approach science thinking, Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is the best explanation. But if you're somebody like me that thinks theories themselves become causal, like they do things in the world, our ideas do things, they physically have consequences.
Kind of like have you seen the whole Simpsons thing? Have you seen this?
No, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
The Simpsons, there's always like these memes, but the Simpsons have, I guess, predicted so many different world events.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like they come up with an idea, they write a story about it, it comes out, then 20 years later, on the exact day or that year, like they predict coronavirus and Trump winning the president, all these different things. And so is it the prediction that is causing? Is it, is it the thought? What is happening?
Yeah. I think there's multiple things going on there, but some of it's like you think you have an original thought, but it's actually what you didn't realize you were doing is reading a lot of inferences that were already there. And so you mentioned about like the power of a human mind. I think people really don't recognize how much information is in front of you all the time, and also people emphasize so much their conscious brain. But I'm one of these people that recognizes my subconscious does everything. It's like my conscious experience is just just talking with you, right? But like almost all my thinking is in my subconscious brain. And so I try to have it sounds really cheesy, but I'm like, I have a healthy relationship with my subconscious brain. If I don't know how to think about something, I push it down, I let it stew down there, and ideas pop up when they're ready for me to try to figure out what to do with them.
How important is it, do you think, for human beings to learn how to love themselves?
I think that's critically important. Yeah. I love us. I think we're the most amazing thing that exists.
I mean, love ourself, the individual, not
individual.
Others. Yeah.
No, I know, but I think it makes me sad when people don't love themselves, because I think to myself, like, not every bit of matter in the universe ever gets to be alive, right? And you, like, every human is like this amazing configuration that has, like, in some sense, unlimited potential of what they can do in the universe. And so I think loving ourselves is really important to realizing that potential. And but I'm also like, I'm an extreme optimist. So, but I like that.
I can't remember, like, I don't know, someone said it's like the odds of being a human are like trillions to one or something, right? Yeah. It's like for your parents to have in that one sperm and that at that moment, it's like trillions to one.
Yes.
And so learn how to enjoy it and appreciate it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not saying it's not going to be difficult times, but learn how to appreciate it and love yourself.
Yeah, and even the difficult times, like, because I like all of us, I've been through things in my life, but like, like they can make you who you are. So, and I can't, I mean, I know people experience absolutely horrible things. But I don't know, it's tough. And the question of like human suffering is super tough. Like, what do you do with that? But I think we do have a lot of potential, and I think people loving themselves is really important.
And what is your meaning of life? What's the meaning of life for you?
I think it's this idea of creativity, but also just like this feeling of purpose.
How do we find our purpose then?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a tough one. I think you meet lots of interesting people. I think the thing for me that's been most interesting is, I didn't travel much when I was young, but like later in life, like all of the people I've met, and in some sense you become an amalgamation of all the people you meet. And so I think if you're feeling like you don't know what your sense of purpose is, that you maybe haven't talked to enough people, because like people are amazing, you learn so much from them, and there's so much happening in the world right now that there's so much to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I like learning from everyone I meet. I think that's been really powerful for me.
What do you feel like is missing in your life right now?
I feel pretty satisfied.
Besides the answer to what is life?
Yeah. I would like it done tomorrow. What is missing in my life? I think, so I'm somebody that really appreciates counter perspectives. Like, I think it's really healthy to adopt someone else's point of view for a little while and then just try to understand it, and also to constantly challenge yours. And sometimes I'm just not sure I'm doing that enough.
Really?
Yeah. So, and also this sort of optimism. Like I'm like an excessive optimist. So maybe I should be more pessimistic. And it's not really like I feel like those are missing from my life, but I guess it's part of my constant questioning of like, am I on the right track? Is to constantly check myself by doing those things. So I think it's important for me to be aware of my limitations and what I understand and don't understand, and to play with those ideas and try to figure out how to.
Right.
So I guess I would be worried about what I'm not thinking about. And that's probably on a personal and a professional level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think of it as not as being pessimistic, but being prepared.
Yes.
Prepared, like, okay, I'm going to expect and hope for the best, but if everything doesn't go as planned, how can I prepare and train myself to be ready for these situations? Yeah. Not saying they're going to happen,
right?
But like from the sports world, we'd always prepare for like, okay, you're exhausted, you have a penalty against you, all these things are against you.
Yeah.
How are you going to calm your mind and go into the next play?
Right.
How are you going to come back?
Yeah.
Not just expecting to be, hoping to be winning, like planning to win, but also preparing for challenges.
Yeah.
I think that's, something we saw in the last few years is people weren't prepared for the amount of weight of challenges that were to come in human society.
Yeah.
And I talked about this in the show before, but in 2008, 2009, that time I was not prepared for the economy. I didn't have any money. I was, financially bankrupt. I was physically injured. All these things I felt like I wasn't prepared. Right. Whereas a year before, I thought like I was on top of the world. I was a great athlete. I was playing professional football, but then I wasn't prepared for the challenges to come.
Yeah.
And when that happened, and I went through a couple of years of adversity, I said, I want to make sure I'm prepared for when this happens again.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm ready for it. Doesn't mean it may affect me in some ways, but it's not going to cripple me. And I think a lot of people, I don't think, are prepared in their lives for that. And I don't think you need to say the world's going to be crazy and I'm a pessimist, but it's when something happens in life, am I physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually training myself to be ready?
Right. I really resonate with that. And I think, like a lot of us are running in what I would call survival mode, where it's like dealing with the instantaneous problem. And because we're so overloaded with those short-term problems, we don't have enough time to plan ahead.
It's tough.
And I personally have been spending the last few years of trying to get out of survival mode.
Really?
I have two kids. They're 6 and 9. I went through divorce a couple years ago, but like their dad has bipolar disorder, and that whole process was really hard for me because I didn't realize I was living in survival mode
the whole time.
Yeah. And he's a wonderful person, and we get along great. So it's like it's nothing to do with like any but it was just like the circumstances and like what you get yourself into, and then how much you don't realize you're doing, and that you don't even have any capacity for like any long-term visions or any resiliency or anything.
It's hard to think about the future when you're living in survival.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Yeah, so I have empathy for that because I've experienced that, and I know a lot of people are going through that. How do you think we can get out of survival mode in order to plan for a greater future for our lives?
I've been trying to learn how to say no to things.
That's huge, right?
It's huge. It's really huge. And also set boundaries. So like this idea that like, because I'm a yes person, like I'm like, I'm a people pleaser. So like I'm always trying to make everybody happy, and always trying to like do everything for everyone. And I realized that like that was really limiting my potential to actually do what I what I need to do, and to also fulfill my purpose, and to even to the detriment of like people in my personal life. Because like if you're saying yes to everyone, you're saying no to something, and it's
interesting because the pandemic really. I had I would say yes to meeting and saying hi to everyone. Yeah. Going to events and all these different things. And now I'm just kind of like, I've got a few core people I want to spend my time with, and I'm, way more selective of events I say yes to.
Yes.
You just got to learn to let go of the fear of missing out.
Yes, exactly.
And realize that you got to take care of your own stuff first.
That's
before you
exactly
can
right.
expand.
And the quality of your time becomes so much better because you know you're choosing it too.
Right.
I mean, some people think there are, like we have evidence of UFOs visiting Earth, but I don't take that as transformative knowledge yet.
Really?
Yeah.
So there is evidence of UFOs.
Well, some people. I didn't say I thought
Some
there
people.
was. Some people think there is. So I'm only bringing that up because probably some people will, like, you know, in the audience, there are probably people have